Hello everybody, Jake your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, it's Monday. On Mondays we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays we wear pink.
Having somebody making wild decisions that make no sense, that benefits nobody.
Oh, yes. Right, yes. Is he listening to us? I can't tell.
He's listening. He's not understanding.
Yeah, he doesn't even, get us, man. We're talking about you.
Today I wanted to talk to you about items, held items and battle items. I recently was asked to do a new held item tier list because I haven't done one in quite some time. So I wanted to go through all of this with you. As always with all my tier lists, a lot of this is based on playing a ton of the game. If there's anything you think, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What items do I get right? What items do I get wrong? And more specifically, what's maybe something that's not high tier, but you've found a great use case for? Let's get into it. We're going to start with held items and then on to battle items right here. We have our tiers for this week, our God tier. We're only going to put one item up in our God tier. We're not friggin' Norse around here. We have our S tier. These things are the best items in the game, and for the Pokemon that they are used for are unbeatable. We have our A tier, extremely solid items. A lot of these are also, very versatile, so you could run them on lots of different Pokemon. We have our B tier. Not going to make a whole thing of it, but it's hard not to. We still have our B tier. We have our C tier. These items are not great. B tiers, those items they're fine. They're reasonable items. And then we have our D tier, our Decidueye Memorial tier. These are items that really just don't have a good place in the game, or at least are almost always beat out by something else. All right, where to begin? Let's start with something in our D tier. Let's just start with the D tier item. That's going to be Rocky Helm. Rocky Helm, its stats aren't bad. I'm going to pull up the stats here on a separate screen that I'm looking at just so I can run through them all here with you guys. Its stats aren't necessarily the bad part about it. The stats I remember being kind of fine on it. It's just the way the item works, which is an absolute disaster. So its stats are 270 HP, 51 defense. Sound reasonable, right? The problem is the way this item activates. I've made a video about this before, but you have to take 10% of your max HP as damage at once, and then a small amount of damage is reflected back in kind of this area around you. It is just a mess. One of the messiest items in Pokemon Unite. I couldn't recommend running it really on any Pokemon. You would think you would run it on tanky things, but it doesn't make sense on tanky things because you don't lose that amount of HP often. And then, okay, you think you'd run it on squishy things, but you might not even be around. It's just such a mess of an item. They need to rework this item completely. What's something in our C tier? Okay, Drain Crown. Drain Crown is a good example of a C tier item. Drain Crown is not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world for a few Pokemon. Very, very specific use case. A few Pokemon, Azumarill, Outrage Dragonite, Pursuit Absol, and even these are not, the problem here is even these are not super ideal. You could run a Garchomp. There are still better choices, even though this item is okay for those. So this gives 120 HP, 18 attack, and you restore HP equal to 13% of the damage dealt with your basic attacks. If this worked for moves, that might be maybe broken or something like that. If it worked for moves, that could be something. It also doesn't work on opponent's shield, so anytime they have a shield, you're just not recovering HP. You find that it's not as much as you think it is. Even like on the Azumarill build that seems to work well with it, I think people don't realize how much they're getting just simply out of Aqua Tails, like HP recovery. This item is extremely niche. It recently got a buff, but it still wasn't enough. C tier item for sure. A good example of a B tier item from this list. Let's take a look. I would say Weakness Policy. Weakness Policy is B tier. Some people might even place this as A tier. It's a great option if you're not stacking on a Pokemon. I think one of the biggest issues with this item is almost every Pokemon you could run this on, you could also stack. And if you were stacking, you would be just doing so much better. It only activates once in combat, but a lot of the Pokemon you'd run this on, like for instance, something like Scissor or something, you're going to be in combat. You're going to be taking that damage. And for those Pokemon, I think this is a pretty solid item. I don't think it's a must run on too many Pokemon. However, there are a few that are pretty good with it. The stats here are 210 HP, 15 attack, not bad. And you get 3% of your attack boosted when you're taking damage up to 4 times, which makes it 12%. So it's a pretty solid item. Again, I feel like B tier is very fair. It's not broken. You don't have to run it on everything, but it's a good item. And again, if you're not stacking, I like this item a lot, specifically for that reason. A great A tier item is going to be Muscle Band. Muscle Band probably used to be S tier, but now that more items are out, this is either high A, low S. It's one of the better items in the game. There are very few things that will actually help increase your attack speed, even though attack speed is a real mess in this game. And on ranged attackers especially, this item is extremely good. It just lets you do tons of chip damage against high HP targets. You do 3% of your opponent's HP, remaining HP, on all of your auto attacks. You'll see this on things like Eldegoss. You'll see it on Cinderace. You see this on tons of Pokemon. Anything that auto attacks a lot, especially from range, can do very, very well with Muscle Band. Until some of the more recent special attack items dropped, you would see this on almost every special attacker in the game too. Muscle's really, really good. High A, low S. It's one of the best in the game. And then an S tier item, I would say there are a few that jump to mind. Let's just go to Slick Spoon right away. Slick Spoon, one of the best items in the game. It gives you special defense. It gives you penetration of your opponent's special defense with your special attacks. It is the game-changing item for special attackers. It's the reason that they are a thing. For the longest time, they were not that useful. You would see some of them here or there. Slick Spoon changed everything. Even after the nerfs, it's one of the best items inside of Pokemon Unite. Kind of a must run on almost any special attack-based Pokemon. 210 HP, 30 special attack as well for base stats. It's just really, really good. There are very few items that reach the potential of Slick Spoon. Let's kind of head back down our list. Let's look for an A tier one. Okay, here's a great A tier one. Curse Incense. This is the special attack version of the curse items. So there's Curse Incense, Curse Bangle. I would say Incense is better because you get more opportunities to apply this in kind of an area effect. There are a few Pokemon that can take advantage of Curse Bangle, but I honestly think Incense just gets way more play. It's a lot easier to apply the effect. You're often attacking at range with all of these special attackers. Really solid item, especially in draft. Now, outside of draft, this item has unfortunate value because you don't know what kind of HP recovery is going to be on the other side of the map. Another item just like that is the Assault Vest. Assault Vest is probably lower. I'm just going to talk about it right now. I think it's either C or maybe low B, like really, really low on the B tier. It's not bad, but you just don't know what you're running into. Now in draft, both of these items gain value for sure. Assault Vest still has this really unfortunate thing where it doesn't recover the Assault Vest unless the whole thing is broken. So your shield doesn't get recovered unless the entire thing is broken. So if it's been like hit a lot, but it is not gone, it keeps it. It takes a little while outside of combat, but I do think in draft, in the right circumstance, this actually does gain a little value for your tanks, but it also kind of was just replaced by another item that we'll talk about soon. Let's throw something else into our B tier right here. A lot of good options for our B tier. I want to see what I want to put in it. You know what? I'll put a Scope Lens in the B tier. It's specific and really good on specific use cases. There are a few Pokemon that work really well with the Scope Lens. It's not as universally loved as something like a Muscle Band, but on a lot of your auto attackers, like your Cinderaces, your Dragapults, Greninjas, stuff like that, you could run a Scope Lens. Garchomp as well does very, very well with this. Absol, of course. I feel like this item's fallen off a bit, especially given that a lot of Pokemon do most of their damage through their moves and not through their auto attacks. But auto attack based Pokemon that want to crit, Scope Lens is a very, very good option. It's one of the only things that's going to boost your ability to do that, right? Our next item, what's another D tier? I guess it's going to be Leftovers. I think Leftovers is better than Rocky Helm. And I've heard Ender describe this item once. I'm going to butcher this, but I've heard Ender describe this item once. It's just kind of like a beginner learn the game item. You don't have to do anything for this item to have an effect. So I think it's mostly for new players who are just figuring the game out. You're not putting something on that they even have to consider what it's going to do inside of a match. It's just you're out of combat and you recover more HP. It did get a buff recently, but even still, it got a buff and other items came out that are just way better. Let's just go to the other item I'm talking about. Resonant Guard, I think, is an S tier item inside of Pokemon Unite. By the way, I've been told in these videos I say inside of Pokemon Unite a lot. So there you go for all those like clocking at home how many times I say that. Resonant Guard inside of Pokemon Unite is a very good item on so many tanky Pokemon. It's crazy. It is like the new defender item. It's mostly replaced Focus Band. It's so good in the laning phase. It's just good throughout every point in the game. You give yourself and an ally a really big shield on a pretty low cooldown. It's crazy good. Like, Resonant Guard is just a perfect item, and it honestly replaces things like Assault Vest so easily. I don't really know what you do with it, right? The other item it kind of replaces Focus Band, which I think is still really good even after the nerfs, but it's definitely not a guaranteed I run this item anymore like it used to be, you know? This used to be an S tier item in my opinion, and while I think Focus Band is quite good, I don't think it is S tier anymore. I didn't like read off the stats of those recent ones. Resonant Guard is 450 HP, by the way, with 18 HP recovery. And then Focus Band, 30 defense, 30 special defense. Focus Band is going to give you a ton of HP recovery when your HP gets low. Resonant Guard is a shield with a cooldown of like every 8 seconds or so, I want to say. It's internal cooldown. It's really, really good. So these items are great. And they're the reason you really don't see things like Leftovers, Assault Vest, is the other items are just so unbelievably good. It's hard to run something else. Heading back down to our B tier right here. This might be a little controversial, but I'm putting Eos Cookie into our B tier. I think a lot of people sleep on the value of Eos Cookie. The problem, again, is it's competing with a lot of items for that final slot. It's a stacking item. It's quite good as a stacking item. Having a ton of extra HP is great. There are just a lot of items that I think do a better... There are a lot of items that would lean more into what your Pokemon is trying to do. I think that's a better way to word it. So, you know, yes, would having 1200 extra HP plus its base amount, which is like 200 something, would that be good? Yeah, its base amount's 240. You can get 1200 by stacking it 6 times, so you get 1440 HP. That's huge. Especially like if you think of something like a Greninja, that's a massive HP change. It's not even like 10%. It's like 20% of that Pokemon's HP, which is huge. But there are a lot of items that you're kind of competing with that slot for. Let's see. C tier. What's another C tier item that just is okay? I'd say Score Shield. Score Shield's probably the best of the C tier so far. It's not used as often, and it's setting you up to play a very specific strategy. It gives you a nice chunk of HP, 450 HP, and it gives you a 10% max HP shield when you are trying to score on a goal. This is great, but the problem is most matches don't come down to who is able to score in the last few moments. They come down to a fight, and this isn't a big fight item. It's an item that really is more about, can you win by peeling off and making a score happen? It doesn't provide the value that it used to either. It got nerfed pretty hard, like in the end of year 1 or something like that. And ever since then, it just is not the item. I like it a lot. I would just say it's not the item, and most matches don't come down to this item. So even something like Assault Vest might provide you more value in certain fights, of course, than Score Shield. However, if you know how to play it, you use it effectively, you can win games with it. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's not the optimal strategy to win games, even though you can use it to win some games. Yeah, so it's a weird one, right? Let's see. I don't know if I have any other D tier, because here's the other option for D tier is going to be Rescue Hood, but I actually don't think it's that bad. It's pretty bad. I don't think it's that bad. It's really specific, and there are only a couple Pokemon I run it on. I run it on... Sometimes I can run it on like Clefable if I'm going... and even still, I don't really often. If I'm going like stacking, EXP share, this... I've run it before on Eldegoss if I'm going Cotton Guard. It's okay. The problem is, and the math court has kind of figured this out, there are just other items, specifically stacking, by the way, stacking specs, that provide so much more healing. I think there's even math that like Wise Glasses does on certain Pokemon. So The only other Pokemon that I always run this on personally is Comfey. On Comfey, I run EXP Share Buddy Barrier this, and it makes your shields bigger, it makes your buddy barriers bigger. But it's really low tier. It's almost probably D tier. They could buff this thing, and they probably should. It's not as useful as I think it should be. All right, let's see what's next. C tier. I think Curse Bangle is low B, high C. The weird thing is the curse items in general are pretty good. There just aren't that many Pokemon that take advantage of this item super well. You would think maybe some auto attackers, but I've gotten so much more value out of just something like a scope lens on a lot of those Pokemon that I find it hard to want to switch it off for a curse item. I think they would need to change something about this item slightly to get people more interested in it. I could talk about the stats of it real quick. It's 24 attack, and then of course it's the HP recovery effect weakened. I think the auto attackers don't make as much use out of this as you would like, right? And then the rescue hood is 30 defense, 30 special defense, and it's increasing the shield effect and the HP recovery effect by 10%. That could probably be 15%, and then it would be a good item. And then curse, I just feel like there's too many other items competing for that spot, unfortunately, for that item. Let's see. What's another B tier? Shellbell. Shellbell's high C, low B. The thing about Shellbell is it does like a lot of good things. It's just outshined by too many items. It gives 24 special attack, which is just not enough, in my opinion. Like choice specs, let me look at it right here. Choice specs is like 39. Yeah, 39. So it doesn't give enough special attack. Its effect can be triggered when you're at full HP, so you don't even recover HP, and then your cooldowns are reduced. It's honestly probably C tier. For a special attacker, it's not terrible. They're just almost every single special attack item I think is better, and I think that's the problem. So Wise Glasses are better. Wise Glasses, I think a lot of Pokemon can run this. A lot of special attack Pokemon, things like Chandelure or Gardevoir or something like that. If you're not running Curse Incense, you would just run Slick Spoon, Choice Specs, Wise Glasses. It's a pretty easy combination for a lot of your special attackers here. I think it beats out Shellbell. Most of these items do. Talking about Choice Specs, I'll just pop them up here. I think Choice Specs is probably your best bet outside of Slick Spoon for these items. Curse as well if you're trying to, reduce healing for your enemies. Choice Specs just give you not only extra damage, not only extra special attack, but it's the type of extra damage that it is. It's the fact that you're getting, when you're using a move, so when you're trying to throw like a water gun or something, as if you're Slowbro or any Pokemon with water gun, if you're Slowbro or your Squirtle or your Inteleon, like any Pokemon that has this, you're getting an extra pop of damage that is going to possibly secure you last hits. And in Pokemon Unite, there you go, in Pokemon Unite, last hitting is so monumentally important. It's the only thing that matters, and the enemy can do 99% of the damage to something. If you get the last hit, you get it. So an item like this is so valuable, especially in the laning phase. I think it just outvalues the other special attack items. I'm going to talk about special attack specs, which I think are probably also underrated. I'm just going to set it right here next to Eos Cookie. I think they're pretty solid, and on a few Pokemon, oddly enough, not the special attack attackers, but more like your defenders and supporters. This item is kind of amazing. So on defenders like Blastoise, Mr. Mime, like their scaling is great with some of their moves, and they do so well with an item like this. It really doesn't make much sense for Pikachu, but it makes a lot of sense for Clefable. The scaling on Moonlight is just so huge. So it's weird, but these are actually like support defender items that work really, really well. Since we've just talked about a few stacking items, I'll talk about the final stacking item, which is attack weight. One of the best items in the game. There are so many Pokemon, a lot of the all-rounders fit into this category, that just every part of their kit scales off one stat, attack, and this gives like 10 levels of attack, basically. It's so powerful. It gives 18 base attack and then 12 attack every time you stack, up to 6 times. So it's something like, I don't know, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something like 98 special attack or something like that. Hold on. Let me hit you with it. It's 12 times 6 plus 18. So it's 90, sorry. It's 90 special 90 attack that you get with this. That is so many levels in Pokemon Unite. It could take you like 5 or 6 levels to get 90 attack. We're talking about a Pokemon being so much more powerful than it should be if you're able to stack early. And it's why you see people throwing themselves for attack weight stacks early in the match, because having them at the end is just so incredibly valuable. One of the best items in the game for sure. Right now we're down to like insane good items across the board. Floatstone, I think, massively underrated item. Some people would probably put this B. I think it's way better. This is a great third slot item for a lot of attack based Pokemon. It gives you a huge chunk of attack. It's like 24 or something like that. Let me pull it up here. It gives you 24 attack, 150 move speed, and out of combat move speed. That's on a pretty low cooldown right now. And it's not only out of combat move speed, it's also move speed that helps you position yourself for big moments inside of fights. So it's not just, oh, you're out of combat, you can run across the map faster. No, it's like this gets you ready to land certain moves. Pokemon like Talonflame, when they're flying, they're not in combat yet. They haven't taken or done any damage. I was using this on Gyarados earlier. Your Unite move like moves so incredibly fast if you use it before entering combat. So there are just some incredible things you can do with Floatstone, and I do think it's massively underrated in the game right now. Charging Charm is kind of the new speedster item. I thought it would be for some auto attackers as well, and some do okay with it, but this really feels like it's set up. It's like the choice specs almost of the attack-based Pokemon, and it really works well on things like Leafeon. Some people run it on Meowscarada, people run it on Absol, people run it on Dodrio. So you just get extra damage based on your auto attacks and your movement. It charges it up. It charges your Charging Charm up to 100 in Pokemon Unite, and then it does an extra pop of damage based on your attack stat, and that can be really big. A very good item for a lot of our like assassin-y type Pokemon. Buddy Barrier, still an A tier item, used to be S tier. Umbreon hurts this, but not so much that it's terrible. I think the thing that really hurts this is Resonant Guard. On a lot of your big like defender Pokemon, Resonant Guard it outclasses so many other defensive items, and I think Buddy Barrier has lost favor because of this. It's still a great item though, and I think people actually underplay Buddy Barrier because it doesn't feel as cool, but it wins big fights, and that's what's important inside of Pokemon Unite. Okay, our next item, Energy Amplifier. For me, this is an S tier item. It like the way I play, I think this is a massively slept on item in Pokemon Unite. I don't want to put too much of my own bias, like what I just love, into the tier list. So for me, this is S tier. You can run it on so many things. Your Unite move is often used in a pivotal moment to win games and win fights. And this just makes you so much more powerful, and it makes it easier for you to throw your Unite. You just throw it more often. I think it's one of the, kind of up there with Floatstone in a different way, one of the most slept on items inside of Unite. EXP Share. Slept on for the wrong reasons, just because people don't understand how it works. EXP Share is hands down one of the best items in the game. It generates more experience than is on the map. I don't think people think about this, but EXP Share, not only do you not need to farm with your supports and some of your defenders when you're running this item, it's generating experience that would otherwise not even be there, essentially. So when you are attacking a wild Pokemon, or your ally is, and you're both next to it, if you're running EXP Share, they're getting 100% of the experience for that wild Pokemon, and you're getting 30%. It is creating experience for your team out of thin air. And it's also the reason that you'll win a lane. You know, an ally will get their level 5 by like birds or something like that at 850. It's because of an item like this. It's truly busted. Razor Claw, one of my absolute favorite items in the game. So good on so many Pokemon. Another slept on item. I think some people might have this in the B tier. The slow, the extra damage, the fact that you get it all the time with this item. There are so many Pokemon this works well with. I think of things like Metagross, Meowscarada, Dodrio. I think of like things that are up in the mix using their moves a lot. Of course, things like Absol, who want extra critical hit. It's so good. Razor Claw is so good. A lot of times it's good on melee Pokemon, but even something like Hyper Beam Dragonite, it's amazing on because you're always using Dragon Dance, so you just get the extra damage all the time. And then we have Rapid Fire Scarf, another A tier item for me. It's kind of been forgotten how good Rapid Fire Scarf is, and that's just, I think, because special attackers are kind of the whole thing right now. But Rapid Fire Scarf is a massive, massive item for your auto attackers. I hate running auto attackers without it now. It's so unbelievably good. It's like you have an X attack on an insanely low cooldown. I love Rapid Fire Scarf. And again, one of the only other items in the game that give attack speed with Muscle Band, even though attack speed's a whole thing. It's just a mess. I don't know what to tell you except it's just a mess. And then finally we have Rusted Sword from Zacian, which oddly enough is the best item in the game because it's on Zacian. But of course this is a D tier item. It's useless, but it's on Zacian, who is not useless at all. If I have to pick a God tier item, and I'm going to for this tier list, it of course is going to be Experience Share. Experience Share is the best item inside of Pokemon Unite. However, it might not be the best item in your solo queue games. I still highly recommend if you're playing supporters, most defenders too, to run an item like this. It's going to make your games a lot better, but it is going to have you carry less. There are so many Pokemon though, from a support and defensive perspective, that defender perspective, that don't want to waste their time farming any of that. They get all their moves and plus moves by level 12. Those are Pokemon you could easily run this item on. However, if you're playing solo, I could see someone moving this down, and then your next option would be one of these three, probably Slick Spoon being the best item in the game after that. So it's either EXP Share or Slick Spoon, but really everything in our S tier are just items that certain Pokemon can barely live without. Slick Spoon is probably, outside of Experience Share, the most game-changing item inside of Pokemon Unite. However, attack weight, I mean, these are all so close. But there are your held items. We're going to move on to our battle items right now. Again, I think it's EXP Share, but if someone wanted to argue with me and say Slick Spoon, even Resonant Guard, even attack weight, I'm not going to argue too hard with you. I mean, these are all insane items. Battle items really fall into a few categories here. I'm going to make this fast because a lot of battle items are personal preference, and really whatever's working for you, I mean, go for it. Play with what strategy works well for you. In my opinion, the S tier are 3 items. Eject Button, Full Heal, and X Speed. They're just insanely good. X Speed is kind of busted with how fast you're able to move, how often. Full Heal, necessary on some Pokemon that dive and just have to deal with the crazy amount of crowd control in the game. And then Eject Button is a MOBA staple that is good for getting in or out of crazy situations. All 3 of these items are top tier items for sure. Our next tier of items, I mean, these are all S. Like, I don't think anything even comes into the A tier if we're being honest about these items. The next items, I think, would be the Potion and probably Shedinjadal. Yeah. And then X Attack, Slow Smoke are maybe C tier. And then Fluffy Tail and Goal Getter are D. So here's my thought process here. Goal Getter, just like Score Shield, is setting up a very specific play style inside the game. I'm not saying you can't do that. It just isn't often what you should be doing if you're trying to actually win the game. What you're doing is unlocking potential win conditions in the game, but you're taking something that's going to make it harder for you to complete the main win condition, which is win the biggest fight possible. Fluffy Tail is just a mess. It's honestly the worst item in the game. There's almost no Pokemon that it's good on. Like, there are a few I like it on. Like, you could run it on Stealth Rock Crustle. You can run it on Green. There are things you can run it on. I mean, you kind of run on like Discharge, Zeraora. It's just not good. In comparison to so many other things. X Attack is really specific. It feels like it doesn't do enough. And oftentimes you would rather have the problem with all these is you just oftentimes would rather have the mobility. Slow Smoke is probably the best of the 3 most recent ones I've talked about, but not that great. There are a couple Pokemon that run it really well, like Comfey. I could see you running it on a defender that's kind of up in the mix a lot, and you can just you know, Sir Mix-a-Lot. You could slow smoke your enemies, but I just don't think that it's that good anymore. We had a slow smoke meta. We don't currently for, you know, the item's been nerfed, and it's just not great. Shedinja Doll is actually a lot better than people think, but it's specific. There are a few Pokemon that work really well with it, and you have to understand the timing of it. I think it's an underused item, but I understand why, because the other 3 items above it are just way better. And then Potion. Potion's actually pretty good, but it's not a cool item at all. Like, it is the worst item. You feel like a jerk. Your team doesn't like you as soon as they see it. It's not bad, especially on a few tanky Pokemon. It's actually pretty good because the amount of healing is legitimate, but it's not a cool item. I'm sorry. It's just not very cool. Like, people would probably rather see that you have Fluffy Tail than having Potion. It's just something to worry about right there. But as I mentioned earlier, please let me know what you think in the comments. What have you had great success with? What do you think I'm right on the money about? What do you think I'm wrong about? As always, fully open to discussion. Just be cool to each other. I hope this helped you, especially if you're a newer player or if you've been playing the game for a while but just haven't switched things up. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you. I'll see you all next time. We did it.